Hi, everyone, and welcome to Open Your Eyes to the Universe. I'm Gabrielle Martin, your host for this evening. Open Your Eyes to the Universe is a series of contemporary talks, conversations, meditations, and interviews with people who inspire and uplift others by sharing their wisdom and their insights and experiences to co-create a better world. And as we begin in a spirit of reconciliation, the Youniverse team acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia, and also their connections to land, to sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. And I also like to acknowledge and respect the wise elder within us all and the collective wisdom of all those here this evening. And tonight on Youniverse, we're in conversation with Sister Jayanti, the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris, and Professor Debbie Haski Leventhal, a Professor of Management and the MBA Director at Macquarie Business School in Sydney. Now, their topic this evening is purpose, meaning, and impact. It's a compelling exploration of the driving forces behind human fulfillment and the lasting effects of individual and collective action. You know, I sense that during these post-human times, many of us find ourselves reconsidering that old essential question around what is the purpose of life, where do I find meaning, and in the face of great global challenges, where we often feel powerless, we query the effectiveness of individual impact. And equally too, I think that some of us perhaps place these questions on the back burner as we understandably attend to the demands of and challenges of everyday living, where our lives have been sometimes reduced to that habitual formula of get up, go to work, go home, go to bed, get up, go to work, and so on, like living life on a daily repeat cycle, a bit like a dishwasher. Doing what's easy, what's familiar, but not necessarily what you may want. And you can begin to wonder if it's even possible to live the life you want and do what really matters to you. So if you've ever pondered questions like, what does it mean to live a purposeful life? Is it about being perfect or ticking off a checklist of achievements or something deeper? Or if you've reflected on questions like, how can I create meaning amidst the routine of everyday living? Or what do personal values have to do with meaning making? Or how can I make a positive difference to myself and others? If you've asked yourself these questions, then you are in the right place tonight and in the right company to explore these big questions. So let me tell you about our speakers, Professor Debbie and Sister Jayanti. Our first speaker is Professor Debbie Haski Leventhal, and she tells me that if a fortune teller had told her at 18 or 19 years of age that she'd one day become a professor of purpose and impact, she'd have asked for a refund. Because at age 19, becoming a subject matter expert on purpose, on meaning and impact was completely off her radar. She tells me that a family tragedy when she was very young led her family to the Kabbalah Center in Israel, and this was years before Madonna and other celebrities joined it. And this is where she grew up, in this environment, which she describes as a cult-like atmosphere, until she managed to escape. And I'm using her words here. And Debbie maintains that higher education and volunteering transformed her life. And she has since devoted her entire career to studying the pro-social behaviors of individuals and companies. Today, Debbie is an awarded and well-published Professor of Business Management and the MBA Director at Macquarie University, Australia. With over 60 academic articles, 5 books, and a TED Talk, she dedicates her teaching, her research, and her knowledge to creating impact and enabling others to find meaningfulness and purpose. So that's a little bit about Debbie. Our second speaker tonight is internationally renowned Sister Jayanti, and she co-leads the largest spiritual organization in the world, open to men and women, yet led by women. Often considered a university, the Brahma Kumaris operates in excess of 4,500 teaching centres in over 120 countries around the world. Sister Jayanti was born in India and raised in London, and she presently divides her time between the Brahma Kumari's headquarters at Mount Abu, Rajasthan, the International Coordinating Office in London, and a hefty schedule of speaking engagements and spiritual mentoring around the world. She is the United Nations representative in Geneva for the Brahma Kumaris, which is accredited with general consultative status with the Economic and Social Council. Wherever she goes, Sister Jayanti brings her message of inner peace, hope, and personal empowerment to individuals, to families, in villages and town centres, and to international forums with global thought leaders, inspiring millions to empower themselves to make positive changes in their lives. So as you can tell by these brief introductions, both Professor Debbie and Sister Jayanti, in their own way, grounded in their sense of purpose, are change agents for a better world. And I'm sure you'd like to know more about them, and Jan will place their website details and other matters in the chat box. And you can also leave your questions for Professor Debbie and Sister Jayanti in the chat too, and I'll pick them up later this evening. But right now, Professor Debbie and Sister Jayanti will be exploring the interconnectedness of purpose, meaning, and impact, and illustrating how discovering one's true purpose leads to a more meaningful life, and then it creates a ripple-like effect that can positively influence others and the world at large. So Professor Debbie and Sister Jayanti, such an honour to have both of you with us tonight. Thank you for agreeing to be part of our program, and a very, very warm welcome to Down Under.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, lovely to be
with
you.
Introduction.
Very nice to be with you. And I think we've got Sister Jayanti there as well.
Hello to both of you. Happy to join you both down under.
I'm not exactly sure where you are, Sister Jayanti, in the world, but wherever it is, I'm sure it's going to be in a different time zone than what Debbie and I are in.
I'm now in India.
You're in India, right. Okay, so it would be about lunchtime for you? Something like that?
Yes,
it is.
That's right, yes.
Great. Okay, so we're in the evening here. But Debbie, let's begin with you. I feel as if I kind of know you more than the measurable hours that I've actually spent with you in your company, because I read your book, and in your recent book, Make It Meaningful, you speak very personally about your search for purpose and meaning, as well as your desire to create positive impact in our world. And as readers, you took us through your childhood marred with tragedy and hardship, and then we met the 19-year-old you in Israel, describing your inner turmoil as you searched for meaning and the quest to find, to find your purpose. And you were really on that voyage. And then many years later in Australia, you deliver a TED talk, beginning very confidently with the question, what is the purpose of the universities and what is their role in the world? Now, I find that a really striking question and a great way to open a TED talk, but it suggests to me that you've truly traveled the personal journey of meaning making and been on the voyage of finding your purpose. And I'm wondering if you can share with us tonight some of the big flags of your roadmap to finding purpose, making meaning, and creating impact.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. It is such a pleasure and a unique privilege to be here with all of you tonight or today, wherever you are. And as you say, I share my personal story because when I was going to write a book about purpose and impact, I knew I could not be detached. I had to bring my whole self into the story because as humans, we really connect with others when they're open up with vulnerability and openness to their true story. So I had to bring up my story, but I didn't want to write a memoir. I wanted to use my story to enable people to find purpose, meaning, and impact in their life. So I'm going to share my slides very briefly, and I will share a little bit of the story with you today. It's going to be a much shorter version than what is in the book, but I would like to do that so we can connect on a more personal level before starting to share ideas on purpose and impact. So this little girl in the middle is me. I was actually born under the name Adi, which means jewel in Hebrew. And I was born in Israel, in Tel Aviv, to a family of 5. And here I am with my brother and sister, the 3 Musketeers. But you see, my brother is wearing a hat because just before I was born and he was 6, he was diagnosed with cancer. So in this period, he was undergoing chemotherapy, which, as you can imagine, affected the entire family. Very sadly, when I was just 3 and he was not even 10, he passed on. And my first memories are of my mother sitting on the floor crying, a bereaved family. And it's not uncommon for children who grow up in such families to feel that they're not enough, that they're not enough to make their family whole again, that they're not enough to make their mother happy again. And that was how I felt. And there was a lot of sadness in our house, naturally. But when I was 5, my mother, who was asking big questions such as, why did this happen? Why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve it? She came across a spiritual center, and she found comfort and answers to some of her questions. So we all joined the Kabbalah Center, as Gabrielle mentioned. Kabbalah is the Jewish mysticism, and for many years it was believed that only men over the age of 40 who have learned or can study this. If not, you're going to go insane. But the head of the Kabbalah Center, Rabbi Berg, who's seen here in the middle, and his wife Karen had another idea. They said, we're going to make this knowledge accessible to everyone. So in the beginning, it was a beautiful idea. It was about making something very spiritual and bringing people together. I actually really loved it. I loved the togetherness. I loved how we were all wearing white and we were all together and we're praying together and spending the high holidays together. Only in retrospect did I realize how it went off the rails at some point. It became a very controlling organization. So some of the things that they've done, for example, have started changing people's names. So my name was changed from Adi to Devora, and I was reborn as a Kabbalah member. There was a lot of abuse. There was sexual abuse, verbal abuse, every kind of abuse you can think of. And at some point, it was no longer so much about spirituality. It was about using spirituality as a means to an end. And the end was to gain wealth and power. And I want to say here very carefully that this experience is mine. Some people find a lot of joy in this center, and it does not represent any other spiritual center or Jewish centers or any Jewish faith whatsoever. This is my personal experience in this organization. When I was 16, I became very devoted to the center, and we used to do something called plowing, which would mean we would go door to door and try to sell their books for money and to recruit more members to the center. And I really loved it. And so I had 2 dreams. One is to be match made by Karen. So I would be arranged to be married to another member of the center and to be sent to one of the fast growing branches of the Kabbalah Center around the world. And so at 18 and a half, after spending a few months in a commune in Tel Aviv, I was sent to a commune in Paris, which was an eye-opening experience and not in a good way. I saw a lot of misery. We were trapped in a small apartment. We had to work in inhumane conditions. It was very, very difficult. At some point, because of that, I hurt my back. And then I was deemed useless. I was worthless. I couldn't bring money in. And so, luckily, because they thought I was worthless, they threw me out and sent me back to Tel Aviv, thinking I would rejoin the commune in Tel Aviv. I also saw how miserable the women were there after they got married, and I thought, this is not what I want anymore. But what do I want? I don't know. I remember landing in Tel Aviv knowing that life as I knew it for 15 years has ended, and I don't know what is next. And I decided to leave the Kabbalah Center, and I decided to find my own meaning in life. And I say that it was as liberating as jumping off an airplane without a parachute, because it was so scary. The faith and the knowledge that I had growing up were the ground that I was walking upon. Losing that meant that I had nothing. I had to really rebuild myself from nothing. And so I had to undergo a deep meaning search where I asked myself, who am I? What do I believe in? What are my values? And one of the first thing I decided to adopt is the value of compassion towards animals and humans, and to try and always be kind to everyone around me. And so within days of leaving the Kabbalah Center and very religious kind of faith, I became vegetarian, which means I never had pork in my life. I never had a cheeseburger. Uh, but it was something that I felt could fulfill my life. I went to university and I studied philosophy, so I can ask all the big questions that I was not allowed to ask before. And so you see me here, I was trying to make a living. I had no financial support. You see me here typing people's assignments so I can make a living, and I took on these old jobs so I can survive. But what I did next completely changed my life, and I can actually point. There are not a lot of people who can point to a certain moment in their life, a sliding door moment that led them to where they are today, but I can. So it was this kid that changed my life, because in Israel they have a huge project called Perach, and university students, nowadays it's 30,000 students every year, work with children from disadvantaged backgrounds. And in return, the government waives half your tuition fee, and it was the only way that I could afford to go to uni. But it was an amazing experience, because for the first time in my life, after years in the Kabbalah Center, I felt this is what it's like to really make a difference, because I influenced this kid. I helped him work out his problems. We used to do art together and go to museums, and I spent a whole year with him, 4 hours a week. And I tried to change him, but he really changed me. And he opened my eyes to the power of volunteering, of doing good in the world without asking anything in return. And so I volunteered for another year, and then I became the volunteer coordinator. And at 24, I became the vice manageress of the project, and I was in charge of 1,000 volunteers and their students. And it was an amazing experience of feeling like I'm really making an impact. So then I decided this is what I want to do when I grow up, and I did a master's degree in management of not-for-profit organizations and a PhD on volunteering. And it started an academic career devoted to pro-social behavior of individuals like volunteers and organizations through CSR, corporate social responsibility, sustainability, positive impact, and activism. And this led me to what Gabrielle has mentioned, my TED Talk, where I started by asking, what is our purpose as a university, as the academia, as higher education? What is our purpose? And how do we move beyond just educating students, giving them degrees and doing great research, to doing something more meaningful for us, for the sector, for students, for the world? And that is my big inner drive in everything that I do, in my teaching, in my research, in my speaking. I ask myself, how can I create a ripple effect impact so that people can take the ideas I generate and do good with it, so that we can have more of a positive impact? And as a professor of corporate social responsibility, I see companies that are truly led by purpose, like Patagonia, caring so much about the environment, they're asking people not to buy their product. I teach in the MBA, this is not what we teach people to do when you run a business. Or Ben and Jerry's, who say, we're a company with a social mission. We just happen to make ice cream, not defined by their products or their sales or their quarterly revenue, by their social mission, which today they put together as activism. Here in Australia, we have a company that was started by three 19-year-olds who were heartbroken by the fact that 900 million people don't have access to clean water. And so many of us hear about those global issues and global problems, and we think, oh, that's terrible. And then we move on to our lives, to our day. But these three guys said, no, we want to do something about it. We're going to start a company and sell bottled water. So the money from that, 100% of the profit would go to fund water projects in the developing world. And then they went on to seeing other problems. So when they saw the problems with sanitation and hygiene, they started a series of body care products. They had food products, they had diapers. And so they had all these products that were just there for impact. As we say, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And Thank You and its founders had such a strong why. So what we see is companies that are no longer obsessed with being the best in the world, the outdoing all their competitors. Instead, they want to be the best for the world. And how can we turn who we are as a person, as a company, to be the best for the world, and to always think about how can we utilize who we are to do good. And so I kept on working and I wrote a book called The Purpose Driven University, and then Make It Meaningful, which is the last book that came out that Gabrielle read. And I always feel some sense of intimacy with people who read the book because they really know my story. I shared it with a lot of details and vulnerability because it was important for me to connect with people. And I know that once you read the story, you do feel a sense of connection, and therefore I can then help guide them around purpose. So very quickly, we don't have a lot of time, but what do I mean by purpose? And as an academic, we always start with a definition. So I looked at the definition of purpose, and it says that a purpose is a reason for which something was done or created, or for which something exists. So if you look at all the objects around you right now, you can pinpoint the purpose for which they were created. So like my microphone here was created to record my voice better, and this cup was created to hold water so I can drink more easily. But if they no longer serve their purpose, if we can't use the microphone, or the glass cannot hold water, we deem them broken, and we could say they're no longer serving their purpose. And as I was writing my book, it occurred to me that maybe so many of us feel a little bit broken because we don't know what our purpose is, or we don't know how to live by our purpose. Some people define their purpose through their family, taking care of their kids, or doing their job, and that is fine. But what I am talking about is something a little bit different. I'm talking about impact purpose, which is the purpose of creating good in the world. And there is a lot of research, I can tell you, looking at what makes life more meaningful and work more meaningful. And it is about having a sense of mattering because you're making a difference in someone else's life, like this boy I helped all these years ago. And so I say in the book that purpose is not a destiny, it's a journey. And it's not an envelope someone's going to give to you one day. It's about living a life that it doesn't stop. It's not like you can reach this goal. You live a life of purpose, and you in everything that you do, you try to ask yourself, what is my purpose right now? How can I use who I am as a force for good in the world? And so to live a more purposeful life, I give an easy tip model that everyone can remember, and I'll touch it very briefly. The tip model stands for talent, impact, and passion. By talent, I mean all the gifts that we have. It doesn't have to be playing the piano or the ability to dance like no one is watching, but all the skills and competencies, your abilities, and that could be just the ability to listen, or having a really good conversation with people, speaking publicly about issues, being an activist, anything that you see as your talent, things that you use for your work or for your hobby or just in your life. And we can keep developing those talents throughout their life. It's never too late to start a new talent, said the woman who at 50 learned how to crochet and at 47 learned how to play the piano. So it's never too late to start learning new talents. But the question is not what is our talent, is how do we tie it to our passion? And people often come to me and say, I don't know what my passion is. I want to find my passion. And it's a bit funny because the word passion actually means suffering. So it's like, I want to find my suffering. But why do we talk about passion in a word that means suffering? Because it's something we care so much about. It can actually make us angry or heartbroken. Something we care so deeply about that we're willing to sacrifice ourselves in order to change the status quo. And that is our passion. And when you say, I don't know what my passion is, it's like, I don't know what I care about. Surely there are things you care about, and that could be the world, climate, animals, women rights, human rights, children well-being, something, the elderly, something that you care about and you want to change. And that is what your passion is all about. But we don't stop there. The question is, can you connect your talent and your passion to create a positive impact in the world? How can I harness my gifts to do good for the world, for something I care about? I'll give you one example. I have a good friend, Danielle, who she loves yoga and she loves doing yoga and she became a yoga instructor, but she also cared very deeply about refugees. She felt for the people who come to Australia not always being treated with open arms and welcoming messages. They're being called boat people, and there were governments in Australia that treated them very badly, and some are still being held almost captive in some islands outside Australia. And so she was very passionate about refugees, and she opened a yoga center that became a not-for-profit, doing yoga with refugee women, children, adults. And she uses the power of yoga and the power of meditation to help them heal. And that is a beautiful way in which she ties her talent and passion and impact. Now, who knows, from the thousands of people who did yoga with her, how many of them went on to heal and do great things in their lives because of this healing? And then she has a dividend of unseen impact. You will never know. But we have an unseen dividend of impact when we create this ripple effect. Gabrielle visited my house and she saw I have a little dam, and in the dam there is a fountain. And every morning I wake up and I see the fountain working in the dam, and I say to myself, this is your life purpose. It's about creating the ripple effect like the water on the dam, because you never know when times that could mean a lot and change their life trajectory. So I'm going to finish off, but I just want to talk about two more words. And this is the meaningfulness in life model. And I'm not going to touch on everything, don't worry. But I want to touch on two words here. The first one is spirituality as part of the enablers of meaningfulness. Now, that is a word that took me a long time to reconnect to. As you can imagine, being exploited by what was called spirituality in my childhood made me stay as far away from it as I could. But 10 years ago, I started reconnecting to my spirituality. And first, I said to myself, I'm not a material person. I don't care so much for material things. So maybe if I'm not materialistic, maybe I'm spiritual. And then I started talking about having this strong connectedness with nature, with the world, with humanity. And it does take a toll because sometimes you really feel other people suffering and you want to do good for the world. But that connectedness, that level of, now I learned in Vedanta, it's called Ritam, this connectedness with the world, with the bigger being, is something I feel very empowered by. And that also is part of my spirituality. And then I do yoga and meditation and play music every day. And that's part of my spiritual practices. And it's not, for me, it's not religion and it's not prescribed that I have to do certain things in certain times, otherwise I will be punished. That is not spirituality. It's this sense of connectedness that I have to this world, that I feel is what I define as spirituality, and people have different ways of defining it. And I can't wait to hear Sister Jayanti take on that. And that helps make meaningfulness together with connectedness, authenticity, and so on. The other thing I want to talk about very briefly, because we could talk about that all day, is happiness. Because we all want to be happy. We want our children to be happy. We even want our employees to be happy. I was asked to step in for another teacher in the MBA today and talk about motivation. And we ended up talking about happiness in work. And so happiness is so important. But what do we mean by happiness? And we were misled by big corporations to believe that happiness is the euphoria when you buy something new. I actually saw an ad by Apple saying euphoria, the euphoria you get from buying a new phone. We're misled to think that it's about the joy of getting a new car or getting a new job. It's about things, it's about stuff. And what happens is when we get the stuff or even the promotion at work, things we think will make us happy, they make us happy, but only for a very short time. The happiness I talk about is more like Aristotle eudaimonia. It's the happiness that comes from a life worth living because you fulfill your potential as a human being and you flourish by helping others to flourish. Now, if you can achieve that, you have this deep, profound sense of happiness in your core that regardless of adversity in life, you still hang on to this happiness because it's not happy, happy, joy, joy. It's this sense of fulfillment that you have in your life, which is why resilience is the next thing, and well-being and perpetual flame. All of it has to do with human flourishing and being able to connect with others in a meaningful way. So the rest of this model can be explored in the book. I don't have the time to look into all of that, but I just want to say thank you. And to finish off with another quote saying that we all need passion. It's like the petrol that fuels the car. But if we don't have purpose, we're just going in circles. We need a direction to where to put our energy. And this is what I try to do through the tip model. How do we tie our passion to our impact to find purpose? Thank you so much.
Evie, that was brilliant, wasn't it? You certainly covered a lot of ground there, and some of the things that I'm remembering, apart from being reminded of your personal story, having read your book, but then listening to you just now, is I get this sense of your incredible courage to move from different places in your life and very significantly different spaces that you've moved into. And I do feel there's this beautiful inner core of courage and insight within you. And I was also, I love your enablers, those 7 enablers, and you've pinpointed spirituality in this conversation tonight. But equally, I loved the other ones as well that I read about. So others might want to check that out when they read your book too. Wasn't aware that passion comes from the word suffering, so that was new to me. Thank you for that. Had no idea about that was connected, but as you described, something that you care deeply about. And loving the way that you tied passion, talent, and impact in the world. That was a lovely equation coming through there. So, yeah, some very deep insights that you're sharing. And I kind of wonder, are you on your own at university? Do many people think like you?
Oh,
I certainly hope so.
I used to be the crazy person around. People
Ah.
would look at me a little bit weirdly, but now I'm not anymore. We have a whole crowd of people who are about social impact, social entrepreneurship, social justice. And it's amazing to see how academia is starting to change to a point where even our accreditation as academic bodies now talk about purpose and impact and how do we enable the students to find their purpose. So I don't feel like the crazy person anymore, and that's wonderful.
And to be able to talk so openly about spirituality, I mean, I think that really shows we're in a different era, isn't it? That you can talk
Yes.
about happiness as an important outcome. And I think there's a lot of studies too that show, happiness is something that can, if you wish it to, drive your productivity. So, yeah, starting to see
Absolutely.
coming through. Thank you for that, Debbie. Really lovely indeed. I'd like to move to introduce Sister Jayanti to you once again. And as you know, Sister Jayanti is the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris. And Sister Jayanti, you co-lead an organisation that is actually a worldwide community of very diverse individuals coming from many different backgrounds and walks of life, from different religions, from different cultures, different castes, creeds, political understandings, and different ages, and so on, and globally, all around the world. And and all of these are dedicated to a life of spiritual upliftment and personal transformation. Now, that suggests to me that this huge network of individuals connected in a sense of community have a very clear sense of shared purpose. And I'm wondering if you could explain the meaning of purpose and also higher purpose within the context of spirituality.
Thank you. And I want to honor what Debbie has said. And I think I'm in total agreement with all the things you were sharing and the various definitions. It was very powerful. Thank you for that. And yes, thank you, Gabrielle. Happy to share. And I'd just like to give a little sketch of my own life. It was fascinating hearing Debbie, but it does give you an understanding of where somebody's coming from and how that has shaped purpose. So if you don't mind, I'll get to your question in a slow roundabout way, maybe, if that's
Absolutely.
okay. Growing up in India, my father was traveling abroad, and I was staying with my grandparents, my mother, and a great grandmother. And so it really was a wonderful extended family all in one place. But I also had lots of cousins and uncles and great uncles all around me. And so it was a very happy, big family. And school days were fine. It was light and easy, no problems. And then when I started um, the journey of spirituality is when I was 8, because my mother and grandmother had started. And so they celebrated my 8th birthday at the center. And that brought me in contact. And summer holidays were spent half a day very happily, just meeting other children, some a bit older, some a bit younger. But it was a very lovely time. Um, a big change then happened, and my father returned from Africa and then had an invitation to settle in London. So within a few months, we came to settle in London, and I became a very tiny nuclear family. My father, my mother, my brother, and me, and that was it. And in London in 1957, December, it was very cold. It was one of the coldest winters, and you tended to stay inside, indoors, a lot of snow outside. And it was a very different experience from being in a big family, physical warmth, spiritual growth and warmth, emotional warmth, and here very cold and in a way very isolated. There were neighbors around, but you didn't really talk to your neighbors. You didn't see much of them anyway. Um, but it was okay. My mother would have me and my brother sit to meditate. We didn't understand what is meditation, but we sat with her. But a few years later, then we both agreed and spoke to our mother and said that my brother's younger than me. But we both spoke to her and said that, there were other things we needed to do. And she was very kind and let it pass. So it was very gentle. But visiting India from time to time through my teenage years, one moment that was a defining moment was when, after having been away for some years, we went back to India for the first time. And it was the monsoon time. It was school holidays in the UK, the month of July. And the monsoons in Bombay, even today, are very heavy in terms of rainfall. And at that time, very, very heavy. And gone midnight, we were driving from the airport to our relative's home. And I saw on the pavement many, many individuals, not just one, but several. Their home had been washed away. It was cardboard, and so the cardboard had melted in the heavy rain. So it was just a heap of paper on the floor. And mother, children, father, they were all just clustered around, supporting each other, huddled together, and they had nowhere else to go. And the feeling I got was, can I go straight back to London? I don't think I can tolerate this. But we'd come after some years, so it was not possible to say, take me back. And the couple of days in Mumbai was very sad. On the one side, a joy to meet relatives and cousins, but on the other side, the poverty just hit you straight in the eyes and in your stomach. But we then went to Pune, where my grandparents were. So it was much easier there. There was poverty, but it was not as harsh as you saw in Mumbai. But I think at that age, I was 15, 1964, and another turning point had been the death of President Kennedy, and I felt I'd lost a hero. But anyway, then it was this poverty. And I think at that moment, in an unconscious way, I decided that my life couldn't be just for myself. It had to be for some form of service. And I didn't articulate it to anybody at that time. But some months later, back in London, having a discussion about what we want to do for our future, 15-year-old girls, when they have time, they talk about things like that. And everybody spoke about going to uni, getting a degree, having a career, getting married and settle down. And I didn't see a trajectory like that for myself. I knew that I had to do something. I didn't know what. And the other girls were very shocked when I spoke to them about this. And I realized that they'd traveled in the US and in Europe, but they'd not traveled in Asia or Africa. So they had never come across such poverty. Another moment came when I'd started uni and I was having an out-of-body experience up there, looking down and asking myself the question. This is during a lecture at the theatre, in a very modern theatre in the university. And I'm up here and I'm asking myself, what are you doing? And my pen had stopped writing, but I could see myself looking down. And I told myself, snap out of it. Came back and started scribbling again. And when I shared this with my parents, my father, who was very, very liberal, and my mother was deeply into Raj Yoga, but both of them agreed that maybe I needed a bit of time out to get to know my roots. Going to India on holiday for 2 weeks is very different to getting to know your roots. So I was happy to do that. Came to India December 67. And 68 was a time of turmoil in Europe, but I was in India. But enjoying tourism, enjoying fun, all the things that teenagers enjoy. But there came a moment when I felt a bit bored. It was the same people, the same chat. It wasn't stimulating enough. I decided that I wanted to study something that only India could offer. And the first thing that came to mind was, let me find out what Raj Yoga really is. And I went to meet Dadi Janki. And when she spoke about Raj Yoga, and the subject that she spoke about was conscience, and how conscience has been influenced by media and society, friends and education, and we don't really understand right from wrong anymore because of all these layers of influence. And my question was, well, how do you remove this? And her answer was, meditate. I said, okay, I'd like to learn to meditate. And the same day, I started the course just a few hours later. And I was told that I'm a soul, a shining star here. And it wasn't difficult for me to accept that soul and body are different. Maybe because of that initial experience of being out of the body, that it felt very comfortable, very familiar. And going home on that short walk of about 10, 15 minutes from the center to my grandmother's home, it felt as if the soul had flown home. I could not remember how I had walked from here to there. It was just a sensation of having flown. And so I was very eager to go back and understand the rest of the introductory course. And each day was a beautiful revelation, many, many questions being answered. And just a few weeks later, there was going to be an exhibition at a place which was just beyond where I was in Pune. So there was Bombay, then there was Pune, and then there was this hill station, a place in the hills called Mahabaleshwar. And at that time, Bombay and Pune centers had collaborated to be able to create this place where people could come and find out more about meditation and the teachings of Raj Yoga. So Daddy Janki suggested that I could go. And so we went along to spend a few days there in the community. Living in a community was very new for me, having been in a nuclear family, but it was beautiful. We'd meditate together, study together, and then have breakfast and go racing down the hill to the place where there's the exhibition. We were at a boarding school which was vacant for the summer holidays. This was May. It was May 1968. By then, the students' riots in Paris had happened, I think, or around that time. It was a time of the hippies and things were changing dramatically in the world. But I was in a ivory tower. I was in this place in the mountains and it was beautiful. A taste of what spirituality can really offer, both in terms of the friendship and the community, but also what I'd see is that people would walk into this exhibition at the town hall, see the images, quite graphic images describing all aspects of meditation. And within half an hour of going around, when they'd come out, their faces were different. Their faces were smiling. And I knew what I had to do. Coming back to Pune a few days later, I said to Daddy, I want to be of service. I want to be able to live in a center. She was very surprised. And she asked me to write a letter to Brahma Baba, who was still very much in the physical world at that time. And Baba could read English and speak a little bit of English, and he knew me. I'd visited Mount Abu a couple of times by then. I wrote to Baba. Next morning, when I go to the morning class, Daddy hands me a telegram. And you don't get telegrams often. Even in those days, you didn't. But Baba decided to send a telegram. And the telegram said that Daddy Janki was coming and I should come with her so that we could talk personally. Meeting Baba, Baba asked me, what would you like to do? I told Baba, I want to be able to serve and I want to surrender. And he said, I knew it already. And I remembered that a few years earlier as a teenager, when I just visited Mount Abu on holiday, he'd said that I'd be a spiritual teacher one day, but I could scarcely understand Hindi, and so it didn't really register very much. And now as Baba spoke, I remembered that scene. And so the next few months were packing up and preparing my parents for what it is I wanted to do. My mother was also shocked, even though she was very much into Raj Yoga, but you couldn't imagine somebody living at the austere life of an ashram. And in those days, at the end of the 60s, life was very basic, very simple, generally in India, but especially in an ashram. And so my mother was surprised, but supportive. And my father was very shocked, but also supportive. So it turned out that by October, I was actually living in a center. And it was a life of great joy. There was a connection with Brahma Baba through letters. He would write to us, everybody in that ashram in Agra, 4 times a day. There'd be a postal delivery, 9 o'clock, and then 12 o'clock, 3 times a day, and again at 4 o'clock. And so he would be sending a letter with each delivery. And it was giving us instructions about the next step, the next step, the next step. And so I began to understand that you could define purpose as being able to live a life of spirituality, a life of happiness, but one which was not just for you, but one in which you were serving others and bringing them also closer to that understanding of purpose and meaning. Purpose became for me the feeling of belonging to the divine, and through that personal transformation, so that I could reach my own highest potential that was there within the self, but I hadn't discovered it. And connected very much with that was purpose in the sense of serving others and being able to help others on that journey towards self-fulfillment or self-attainment, realization, whatever way you call it. I want to share another little anecdote about purpose. Here's a man walking along and he sees people working on something. They're bricklayers. And he stops and he asks the first man, "What is it that you're doing?" And the man says, "I'm building a wall." "Why are you doing this?" "So that I can feed myself and look after myself." Walks a little bit further. Second man, and externally he's doing the same job. And he asks the man, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm building a wall, and the purpose to be able to feed my family and myself." So now it extended a little bit beyond just me and I, but my family. Goes a little bit further, and he asks the man, "What are you doing?" "Yes, it's a building a wall, and the purpose, I'm building a cathedral for the glory of God." Same job, same task, but different consciousness, different awareness. And can you imagine the look on each person's face as they must have spoken? Mundane, I'm doing it for myself. A bit of joy, I'm doing it for my family. But the beauty and the light in the person's eyes who said, "I'm doing this for the glory of God." And it just shows how when there is purpose, then whatever else it is you're doing is okay. But it takes on a very different sense of meaning if I know what the purpose is. And can you imagine the love with which I do something when I know the purpose behind it? So that it's not just something that I'm doing, but I'm going to do it with a great deal of love, a great deal of enthusiasm. And so, in a way, that for me describes purpose, being able to achieve my own highest potential. And yes, meditation would be one of the methods, the enablers, to be able to come to that state. But connected with the meditation and Raj Yoga is very much the whole subject of understanding spirituality and the teachings of spirituality. And so when I understood about the soul, it answered 1,000 questions. When I understood who is the divine, and I was able to have the personal experience of a relationship with the divine, that was in itself great joy and fulfillment, a huge experience of love. And then when I understood about karma philosophy, and I don't intend to talk about it in detail now, but that whole idea that action brings reaction, and every action has a cause and it has an effect, and the seed and the tree and the tree and the seed. And so it's a fascinating subject, but it really helps you understand what's going on in my own life. What is it that I can do to make a difference to my life, but also to the world out there? And yes, very much I agree with this concept of impact being a ripple effect. Harvard University did an experiment in a summer school, and again, no details, but one person's kind act can travel and impact at least 125 others. I love that, because definitely then pulls me out of that situation of feeling, well, what can I do alone? But no, one person can impact a minimum of 125, and a powerful individual playing an important role, a powerful role, can impact thousands and thousands. And if you look around the world, that's exactly what's going on. The impact of one on another, or one on many, many others. And that creates the culture, that creates the situation of the world, good or bad, whichever way it goes. But it's this whole concept of every human individual has energy and creates an impact. And so when my purpose is not just for me, but the awareness that when I move in the direction of my higher purpose in life, not just eating, sleeping, drinking, but the highest potential I can attain. And it also is part of the journey that I engage in service. I can't reach my highest potential unless I'm ready to give and serve in some form or another. And then that becomes part of my journey of fulfillment. But also I do it because I understand there is meaning behind the things I'm thinking and saying and doing. And the more aware I am of meaning, the quicker I move to my highest potential. I'm able to fulfill my purpose. And the impact, you don't have to think about it, but there's an automatic ripple effect on everybody around you, whether one person stops smoking in an office and other person, now there's a law you can't, but I know that in earlier days, one person would stop smoking in an office and there'd be a ripple effect. And within some space of time, nobody would be smoking in that office. That happened to so many. So the impact is visible sometimes, but very often it's not so visible. But yes, you know that if the seed is good, then the results are also going to be good. The fruits of that seed are always going to be good. And so the impact is then one person sows the seed, but when the fruit comes, it's not just for one person. Many others can enjoy the apples from a tree that was planted way back by one particular individual. And so I know that spirituality is the way forward for the world, because it's lack of values that has created the chaos today. And values lie within the spirit, the soul. And so when we connect with ourselves, we're able to connect with the original pure goodness of the spirit, of the soul itself. The kindness, the compassion, the love, the truth, all blossoms. And the soul flourishes, but of course, and is sharing this with everyone in every connection, in every contact. And so there's definitely going to be an impact on the world. And we have a slogan I want to share. When I change, the world changes also. And so first, the immediate impact in my little world around me, but beyond that, as a minority begins to become powerful, the impact of the minority is able to change the thinking of the majority. And it's through changing our consciousness, our thinking, that we can deal with all the issues of the world, whether it's violence, whether it's terrorism, whether it's climate change or the breakdown of the environment or the state of the economy. I'm being very simplistic, and that's fine, but just think about it further. My consciousness and my change of consciousness away from the limited external physical to a spiritual perspective and a bigger perspective of my family as the universe, the whole world, definitely changes the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Jayanti. That was incredibly thorough in such a short space of time as well. And I was really listening to what you're saying about a moment in your life when you knew that in a very unconscious way that you knew your life was for a higher purpose, was to serve others. I think that was around about the time when you went back to India, still as a child, and saw the poverty. And I think you described that brilliantly. I was certainly feeling it as you spoke it anyway. But this aspect of being able to know something in an unconscious way that later materializes in your life, so that when it came to you mentioning it to the founder of the university, Brahma Baba, he said, I already knew. And I'm wondering if there's a little bit of a divine plan there, or if our sense of purpose comes to us in a constructed way, in a predetermined way, and if it's connected at all to something deeply unconscious for all of us.
I think that's true. When I begin to discover my passion, what it is I care about, lovely definition, thank you for that. But also when I discover purpose, then it is part of a divine plan, I believe. And I think that applies to everyone.
Well, look, we're going to open in a moment for questions, but could you lead us in a meditation before we do that? Would that be okay?
I'd love to. Thank you. Sitting quietly, comfortably, so that the body can relax. Your shoulders can drop, and you can breathe easy. I become aware of the light that I am shining in the center of the forehead. And in this awareness of the inner being, I begin to find peace, going deeper and deeper within. I connect with the peace that lies within. And in this awareness of my own spiritual identity, I can feel the presence of the divine, the supreme, the being of light, the source of all positive attributes, the source from whom emerges an ocean of love, an ocean of peace, an ocean of knowledge. Connecting my thoughts to this divine being, peace, love, and knowledge reach the soul, and I absorb all of these qualities within myself. I hold this awareness and come back to the moment here and now in the physical dimension, but now carrying this experience to be able to use this in the way I think and speak and do all that I need to. Om, I am Shanti, peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Jayanti. I'm going to pitch some questions that have come through, and some of them are assigned to someone, but otherwise I think it's really just over to either of you to answer as you feel inclined. But someone's asking here, what are the signs of living life purposefully? And can you summarize the essential ingredients to building a purposeful life?
Debbie?
I loved how Sister Jayanti talked about the light in your eyes. When you live a purposeful life, you get to keep the sparkle. There is something, an inner flame within you when you know that you are devoting your life for goodness. And it's not easy. It's not all joyful, but when you do that, you have this sense of profound connectedness and happiness. Not always, but most of the time it's what you feel. You have this sense of mattering, that your life really matters, and you also start becoming more eager to do more of that. The more purpose and impact you create, the more you want to create. It's just a perpetual flame and a perpetual want to do good for the world. So this is for me about how do you know that you're doing it? You do have a sense of fulfillment, and it is about asking yourself every day, how can I use who I am, what I know, what I care about, to do good in the world? And that's for me, in the nutshell, what it means to live a more purposeful life.
Thanks, Debbie. Anything from you, Sister Jayanti, on that?
Beautiful definition. And I would just add that everything feels very worthwhile. And when you know that your time, your money, your energy, everything is being used in a worthwhile way, it brings a sense of contentment. And it's a very good incentive to do more, as you said, Debbie. So I think that one of the reasons why people get depressed is because they're not finding purpose. They haven't given time to ask themselves that question. And what I'm finding is that young people, especially, I hear very sad stories about depression and so forth, generally in the world. And maybe it's become more visible since COVID. Prior to that, it was there, but maybe it was more under the surface. And now it's become very visible. But it's so important to find purpose and know that, like you said, your life matters and
Yes.
every moment matters.
We spend so much money going to therapy where so many of us don't find relief. And someone in the 1960s came up with the idea of a helper's therapy. When we help others, we help ourselves. And it's such an ancient idea. It's such an ancient wisdom. I think it was Gandhi who said, find yourself and lose yourself in the service of others. Because when you are in the service of others, you lose yourself. You stop thinking about your own problems and your own issues, but you also find yourself. You discover who you are in a way that is not defined by your job or your age or your title. It is about service of others, and I think it's a beautiful notion.
Agree.
Here's one that's saying, does everyone have a purpose? And is there a plan for each of us? And similarly, a second question, does the soul have a special calling or purpose? If yes, what? And does my karma and other people's influence dictate my soul's calling?
That is a
Bit in
question
there.
for you, Sister Jayanti.
Quite a bit in there. Do you want me to say it again? Read it again.
No, it's okay.
Does,
Quote it. I believe that every single soul has a purpose, and it's important to give time and attention to try and make sense of it and find it. But also, I think that whatever situation I find myself in today, depends on the karma or the past. And so that's created the circumstances I'm in today. But today, I believe that if I seek knowledge, if I seek wisdom, then that journey of finding knowledge, wisdom, is going to move me in a direction that takes me out of the sphere of influence of others so that I begin to define my own life and journey and purpose. If I'm stuck there thinking, oh, well, what can I do about this? This is how life has shaped me. This is how I am. But that's only from the past. But today, at this moment, I have total choice. And so knowing that I have total choice, I can truly rise above the limits that others impose on me. And this whole concept has such a big impact. Say, for example, in the 60s, the pressures that were put on women or girls, I would say, to do this and not do this. Girls don't do this. Girls can do this. They should do this. You know, that sort of idea of gender or even race. This idea that I have to just simply sit back and say, well, what can I do about it? These are my circumstances. It impacts race, it impacts gender, it impacts age. There's so much discrimination in terms of age today also, or disabilities, or different abilities. And you can rise above all those things.
Beautiful. Can I just add a couple of things here? So firstly, if you don't know, if you feel confused, I don't know what my purpose is, just start. Just help others, volunteer, smile to people, be kind. Just start from where you are. You don't have to think about, I have to start a movement, or a movement could be two people. You start with two people, and that's how you start. And I was very privileged 2 weeks ago to give a keynote address to 300 people. And I was just thinking about what you said, Sister Jayanti, about what can I do? I'm just one person. And we often have that notion. It's like, oh, but how am I going to change the world? Well, you're not going to change the world. You're not going to save the world. That's your ego. But you can connect with others to do good. And so I was giving this keynote address, and it just came to me as I was speaking. And I asked the first person in the first row to say, what can I do? I'm just one person. And then I asked the person next to her to say it with her. And they said it together. And then I asked the first row to all say together, 20 people saying, what can I do? I'm just one person. And then 350 people in the hall saying together, what can I do? I am just one person. And it became so loud and obvious that together we can do so much that this sentence becomes meaningless. Really, is about starting where you are, doing what you can. And I heard this beautiful lecture from Ronnie Khan, who started Oz Harvest, which is an Australian organization for saving food and fighting food insecurity. She's a beautiful human being. And she said, if you see a fire, there are three things you can do. You can be very angry about it, or you can write to the politicians, or maybe you can call someone else to fix the problem, or you can go and take a bucket and try to turn off the fire. And if you don't have a bucket, take a glass. And if you don't have a glass, take a spoon. And you might say, but it's just one spoon. What can I do with one spoon against this big fire? But there are millions of us, and we're all holding spoons together. And that's how we change the world.
Beautiful. Thank you.
That's lovely. It's lovely. Thank you. Here's another one that's come through. How do I overcome self-limiting beliefs? Perhaps it's a little bit connected to this feeling of being, what can I do? I'm only one.
Yes.
But how do I overcome self-limiting beliefs?
Sister Jayanti, would you like to start?
To me, this idea came about and got thrown out totally in terms of limitations. And I came to the awareness that I am that inner light. And yes, I occupy a physical chariot, which is precious and valuable, but it's only my vehicle. And I am that living energy within this. And so when others see me only with that consciousness of this physical form, they're going to put me into a box and they're going to try and limit me. But I accept all those limitations myself because I've put myself in that box. When I come to the awareness of that inner being, I'm not in that box anymore, and I have my own inner dignity. And even if others try to put me in a box, I don't accept that. It's not aggression, but and it's not passive, but it's an absolute awareness that I can hold my head up high and nobody can take my dignity away from me. And so when I come to this awareness of my spiritual identity, there are no restrictions or limitations.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Here's one that's saying, I often feel that I am living a demand-driven life. Can you explain a vision-guided life, and is it different from my purpose?
Oh, wow. It can be, and it can be the same. So we do put all these limitations over ourselves. And we say, well, we're too busy, we're working, we have kids. I don't have time to do work for my purpose. And I have this LinkedIn newsletter, 3 on Purpose. Every 2 weeks, I offer 3 insights about purpose. And in one of them, I talk about limitations and obstacles. And there is a beautiful idea that I like, that the only way around is through. So if you want to get through the forest, you have to walk through the trees. And if you feel like I need to do something, but I don't know where to start, or I have all these limitations, use them. Use your curiosity, your ability to start something anew. If you say, I'm too busy with my kids, do something with your kids. If I'm too busy working, do something with your workplace. I know people who changed their entire organizations to become more purpose driven, and they were not necessarily you can do that. And about the vision and the purpose, I really love the word vision because it's about seeing. It's not just about an idea and a dream. It's about being able to see that. And if you can have a purpose-driven vision to better humanity and to leave the world a little bit better than when you found it, and it could be something minimal, but you say, this is my role in this world, then that becomes your vision. Which is why I use the idea of not best in the world, because one of my students once said, yes, you're talking about a vision, but we have a vision and it doesn't speak to me. And I said, what is the vision? And he said, the vision is the company will be the #1 in the market. And I said, I'm sorry, this is a really terrible vision. It does not inspire you. It does not engage you. But if being best for the world is something that so many of us feel a lot more connected to, we are biologically hardwired to connect with others. We have hormones like oxytocin and dopamine that come up when we hug each other and when we connect. And we're really like designed to connect. And recent research has shown that loneliness can have worse effect than smoking on the body because we're not biologically designed to be alone. We're biologically designed to be together. So to have a vision that is about connecting with others and serving, I think, and having an impact, that is how your vision and purpose can become one.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Debbie. Sister Jayanti, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
I think that's beautiful. I'll stay
Yeah.
with that.
Okay. Here's one that's addressed to Professor Debbie. How committed are corporations and organizations to corporate social responsibility, and how can we encourage them to be if they are not?
My life work. Yes. So I feel that for too long, companies have thought that their goal is to maximize shareholder value and to maximize quarterly profits with a very short-term focus, and thinking that if we do anything bad, we call it externalities, and then someone else takes the responsibility for it. When I talk about corporate social responsibility, I would like to explain that I do not talk about philanthropy. I do not talk about giving money to charity or employee volunteering. I talk about responsibility in the most profound way of understanding responsibility. If I have this power as a big corporation and I'm affecting people's lives, I need to be held accountable and responsible for their well-being. And that's part of what, as a corporation, we need to do. So as a corporation, they say with great power comes great responsibility, but also comes a great ability to do more and to create a net positive impact. So in my new book around CSR, I talk about net positive impact, because no company or a person can only create positive impact. We all create some kind of negative impact. Even if trying to live as sustainably as I can, I still have a carbon footprint. So a net positive impact is about minimizing the harm as much as I can and maximizing the positive impact. And this is now the conversation, as I've shown in some of my slides. This is the conversation that an increasing number of corporations are starting to have. So if your company is only still focused on quarterly profits, you're lagging, and you need to come up to what the world is now expecting from you. And it is the only way we can really address society's greatest problem. Poverty, gender inequality, and many of the other issues that we have in the world are not a coincidence. They were created oftentimes by greedy corporations that wanted to use poverty to pay people very little and maximize their profit and so on. So it's time for us to really reconsider the role of business in society and change the relationship with the world.
That's wonderful. That's amazing what you've just said there, Professor Debbie. Excellent. I think it's really striking at the heart of the way that we do things in our world presently. So it's a big task. There's a lot to be done there, yeah. Mm.
Absolutely. We're not there yet.
No, but I find it very encouraging that we're thinking in those ways. Like that's a huge movement forward, isn't it? Just to be thinking that and repositioning the role of business. Yeah. This is one for Sister Janti. I've listened to you where you have shared a vision and a purpose of a future world where living is respectful to each other, animals, and the environment. We don't seem to be anywhere near this in present reality. Is there a divine plan, and where is God in all of this?
One of the beautiful things in terms of the role of God is that God creates a beautiful world, and all the, whether you call it the scriptures or you call it the legends or the fairy tales that come from across the world, we know about a world that was beautiful. And what happened to it then? Well, it wasn't God's intervention. It was human action and reaction, and you see the state of the world today as it is. So it wasn't God's plan in the sense that the world he created was beautiful. And we've made a mess of it in very simple words. You know more about the detail than I do, probably, but everything has become rather a mess. And God's role now is to teach us so that then we can put in our energy to creating a good life for ourselves. But that also means that my life is not a selfish one, but my life is one for others. And so when I put that energy into this, then my life is uplifted. It's come up earlier. But also I'm able to support others in their journey. And as we go through this process of change away from I and my and mine into the awareness of a family, one world, one family, then I think that we're moving in that direction. We can then take God's power, God's love to bring about that change, and a better world can be made available for everyone once more. So yes, I believe that there can be change in human beings. I know I've changed myself. There's more to do with work in progress, but I know that I couldn't have come this far without the help from the one above. But my hope is that as others also begin to recognize that spirituality is truly the way forward, where it's not just selfishness, but more of a concern for the whole, then yes, together, and it has to be together, it's not one individual, but all of us together, collaboration, that is the way forward. Then we're going to be able to have that vision become a reality. And I hold that vision very much in my heart. It resonates with me. I feel that that is the way we should be. And I love this concept of the hardwiring in the brain or in biology, that we are creatures of society. We're not creatures of solitude and isolation, but we are creatures in which we live together as a family. And I think that we can make that happen.
Thank you. We do have one or two more questions, but we are out of time. But a rich conversation, and perhaps could we have a live commentary from you again, Sister Jayanti? Would that be a lovely way to bring together some of these rich concepts that both Professor Debbie and you have been sharing?
I just want to give my thanks to Professor Debbie and also to you, Gabrielle, before I get into the meditation. Much appreciation for all that you've offered.
Thank you so much. It was really uplifting. If I could just have one request before we go.
Yes.
The place where I come from, there is a lot of suffering there right now. There is a lot of bleeding, a lot of suffering in both sides. And as we meditate, if we could all please just send some thoughts of love and peace into this region, that would be really beautiful.
Thank you. Yes. Connecting with the being that I am. I also connect with the source, with the divine. And the light and love that reaches me is not just for me. The light and love from the source reaches out to the whole of humanity, especially those regions where there is huge suffering now. From the source, the light of love, of peace, of truth reaches human hearts so that they begin to see things differently and behave differently. And this light reaches out to all forms of life, all the varieties of the animals and the birds and all forms and shapes, and offers them protection and comfort and solace. And this light reaches out to all the elements of nature, all the life that exists here in its myriad forms on the planet, so that all may come together in harmony. Humans in harmony with each other, in harmony with all animals and birds and bees, and humans in harmony with all biological life, the plants, the trees, and all that is here on this beautiful planet. So that through harmony, we can create a better world for all. The light from above shines on us all. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Jayanti, for that. And I'd like to thank both of you, Professor Debbie, our thanks and blessings to you for living a meaningful and purpose-led life, and also for being so dedicated to creating impact and living your life where you've really reached into enabling others to find meaningfulness and purpose. So our thanks and blessings to you for that. And may it continue. It's been a pleasure having both of you here on Youniverse. And Sister Jayanti, of course, it's our thanks and blessings to you for living your higher purpose and for being a visionary leader guided by spiritual values and principles, and also for being deeply compassionate and respectful towards all living beings and living creatures, the environment and the nature, as evidenced in your last meditation commentary. But thank you both. It's been an enriching conversation, and deep appreciation that you've taken the time to join us on Youniverse.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, viewers, Sister Jayanti will be in Sydney and Melbourne briefly in April 2025, so watch this space for announcements closer to the time about her public programs being offered in both cities, and Melbourne and Sydney. And Professor Debbie lives and works locally, and I'm sure you can reach out to her via her website if you wish to. But in the meantime, you may like to browse our online bookshop, Eternity Inc., which has a full online range of books on self-empowerment and inner powers, always at not-for-profit prices, so do check them out. And if you'd like to subscribe to Open Your Eyes to the Youniverse to receive monthly updates, then please email us at special.events@au.brahmakumaris.org. And in terms of our next episode of Youniverse, it will be on the 23rd of November, 6 p.m. That's daylight saving time here in Sydney. And our conversation will be on soft power. And as we close out tonight, we'll be playing a special song for you on Journey. And so until we see you on the 23rd of November, live a purposeful life and take care and walk lightly on this earth. Om Shanti.